All right, you've got a brain, 3 pounds of electric meat sitting in your skull, somehow generating thoughts, feelings, memories, and the inexplicable urge to check your phone every 90 seconds. Psychology is the science trying to figure out how this biological chaos factory works and why it keeps making terrible decisions. Let's explain all of it, fast. Psychology isn't just therapy couches and ink blots. It's the scientific study of mind and behavior, which means everything from why you can't remember where you put your keys to why crowds do stupid things together. There are 5 major branches. Biological psychology studies the brain hardware. Cognitive psychology examines thinking and memory. Social psychology investigates how people influence each other. Developmental psychology tracks changes across the lifespan. Clinical psychology deals with mental disorders and treatment. Different lenses, same weird species. The field started with introspection, philosophers asking themselves questions and assuming everyone else's brain worked identically. Spoiler, terrible method. Then came structuralism, trying to break consciousness into parts like IKEA furniture. Then functionalism, asking what mental processes actually do. Then behaviorism, which said forget consciousness entirely, just study observable actions. Then the cognitive revolution brought minds back. Now we've got neuroscience showing us live brain scans while people think, choose, and lie. Psychology went from armchair speculation to hard science in about 150 years, which for an academic field is basically warp speed. How do psychologists actually know things? The scientific method. You start with a hypothesis, a testable prediction, then you design studies with independent variables, the thing you manipulate, and dependent variables, the thing you measure. Controls keep everything else constant so you're not measuring random noise. You can run experiments where you actively change conditions, or observational studies where you just watch what happens naturally. Tools include surveys, interviews tracking what people say, case studies diving deep into one person or situation, and brain imaging showing neural activity in real time. The critical part? Replication. If your findings can't be reproduced by other researchers, they're probably garbage. Psychology has a replication crisis right now. A lot of famous studies don't hold up. We'll get to that. Okay, let's start with the hardware. Your brain is the single most complex object in the known universe. About 86 billion neurons, each connected to thousands of others, creating trillions of synaptic connections firing constantly. Neurons are brain cells that transmit information electrically within themselves and chemically between each other. That chemistry happens via neurotransmitters, molecules like dopamine, serotonin, and GABA that cross the synapse, the gap between neurons, and bind to receptors on the next cell. Different neurotransmitters do different things. Dopamine handles reward and motivation. Serotonin regulates mood and sleep. GABA calms neural activity. Too much or too little of any of these and things go sideways fast. The brain itself has specialized regions. The cortex, the wrinkly outer layer, handles higher functions like reasoning, language, and planning. The limbic system buried deeper processes emotion and memory. The brainstem at the base controls survival basics like breathing and heart rate. Damage one area, lose specific abilities. Famous case, Phineas Gage, railroad worker who took an iron rod through his frontal lobe in 1848. Survived, but his personality changed completely. Impulsive, erratic, couldn't plan. That told researchers the frontal lobe manages executive function and impulse control. One accident, decades of insight. But how much of behavior is brain wiring versus environment? That's the nature versus nurture debate, and the answer is yes. Both. Always. Twin studies comparing identical twins raised apart show genetics matter. Adopted children studies show environment matters. Reality. Genes load the gun, environment pulls the trigger. Or genes set a range. Experience determines where you land in that range. Traits like intelligence, temperament, and mental illness all show heritability, meaning genes contribute, but none are purely genetic. You inherit vulnerabilities and potentials, not destinies. Your brain doesn't just process thoughts. It processes the entire external world through sensation and perception. Sensation is raw data from sensory organs. Eyes detect light waves, ears detect sound waves. Skin detects pressure and temperature. Perception is your brain interpreting that data into meaningful experience. The crazy part? Perception isn't objective. Your brain fills in gaps, makes assumptions, and sometimes straight up lies to you. Optical illusions exploit this. You see motion where none exists or colors that aren't there because your visual cortex is running prediction algorithms, not just recording reality. Same reason eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable. Memory isn't a recording, it's a reconstruction. More on that in 60 seconds. Now let's talk learning, how brains change based on experience. Classical conditioning, discovered by Pavlov with his dogs, pairs a neutral stimulus with a meaningful one, until the neutral stimulus alone triggers a response. Bell plus food equals salivation. Eventually, Bell alone equals salivation. This explains phobias, cravings, and why certain songs make you nostalgic. Your brain associated unrelated things through repeated pairing. Operant conditioning, developed by Skinner, uses consequences to shape behavior. Positive reinforcement adds something good. Gold star, paycheck, dopamine hit. Negative reinforcement removes something bad. Turn off the alarm, pain stops. Punishment adds something bad to decrease behavior. Fines, pain, social shame. All incredibly effective at training animals and humans. Casinos use variable ratio reinforcement schedules, rewards delivered unpredictably, to keep people pulling slot levers forever. Same reason you check your phone. Maybe there's something interesting this time, maybe not. That uncertainty is addictive. Then there's observational learning, Albert Bandura's discovery that you don't need direct experience to learn. You can watch others and copy. The Bobo doll experiment showed kids beating up an inflatable clown after watching adults do it. Not because they were rewarded, just because they saw it. This is how culture transmits, how violence spreads, and why your toddler suddenly knows curse words you definitely didn't teach them. Memory comes in stages. Sensory memory holds raw input for milliseconds. Echoic memory for sound, iconic for vision. Blink and it's gone. Short-term memory, now called working memory, holds about 7 items for roughly 20 seconds unless you actively rehearse them. That's why phone numbers are 7 digits. Any longer and you forget mid-dial. Long-term memory is functionally unlimited storage. Explicit memory includes facts and events you consciously recall. Implicit memory includes skills and conditioning you can't articulate. Riding a bike, recognizing faces, flinching at certain sounds. But memory isn't reliable. Elizabeth Loftus proved you can implant false memories just by asking leading questions. Show someone a car crash video, ask how fast the car smashed versus contacted, and their speed estimates change. Ask if they saw broken glass that wasn't there, and later they'll swear they did. This wrecks criminal trials. Confident witnesses are often wrong. Flashbulb memories, supposedly vivid recollections of shocking events, decay and distort just like everything else. Your memory is not a recording. It's a story your brain tells itself, and every retelling edits the script. Thinking and problem-solving use heuristics, mental shortcuts that work fast but aren't always accurate. Availability. Heuristic judges likelihood by how easily examples come to mind. Plane crashes feel more common than car crashes because they're more memorable. Representativeness. Heuristic judges category membership by stereotypes. Anchoring heuristic fixes on the first number you hear. See a coat marked down from $500 to $100 feels like a deal even if it's only worth $50. These biases are hardwired. Everyone has them. Being smart doesn't help. Language is uniquely human, at least at this complexity. Kids acquire language shockingly fast without formal instruction. Noam Chomsky argued, "We're born with a universal grammar, innate rules all languages share." Others say it's pure learning from environment, probably both. Critical periods matter. Learn a language before puberty, you sound native. After, you've got an accent forever. Language shapes thought to some degree. Cultures with more color words see more color distinctions. But the strong Sapir-Whorf hypothesis that language fully determines thought is nonsense. You can think about things you don't have words for. You're doing it right now. Let's jump to development. Jean Piaget mapped cognitive stages. Sensorimotor, birth to age 2, learning through senses and actions, pre-operational, 2 to 7, symbolic thinking but egocentric and illogical, concrete operational, 7 to 11, logical thinking about physical objects, formal operational, 12 plus, abstract reasoning and hypotheticals. His stages are rough and culture dependent, but the core idea holds. Kids aren't just small adults. Their brains literally process the world differently. Erikson outlined psychosocial stages across the lifespan. Each stage has a crisis. Infancy is trust versus mistrust. Toddlerhood is autonomy versus shame. Adolescence is identity versus role confusion. Young adulthood is intimacy versus isolation. Middle age is generativity versus stagnation. Old age is integrity versus despair. Resolve the crisis successfully, you gain a virtue. Fail, you carry the damage forward. Harsh but useful framework. Lev Vygotsky emphasized social context. The zone of proximal development is the gap between what a kid can do alone versus with guidance. That's where learning happens. Scaffolding, the help provided by teachers or peers, allows mastery. Remove the scaffolding too soon, they fail. Leave it too long, they don't learn independence. Parenting styles matter here. Authoritative, high warmth, and high expectations produces the best outcomes. Authoritarian, high control and low warmth produces compliance but anxiety. Permissive, high warmth and low expectations produces entitlement. Neglectful, low everything produces disaster. Attachment theory, developed by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth, explains early bonds. Secure attachment. Caregiver is reliable. Kid explores confidently. Anxious attachment. Caregiver is inconsistent. Kid clings and panics. Avoidant attachment. Caregiver is distant. Kid suppresses needs. Disorganized attachment. Caregiver is frightening. Kid has no coherent strategy. These patterns predict adult relationships. Securely attached adults trust easily and maintain healthy boundaries. Anxiously attached adults fear abandonment and need constant reassurance. Avoidant adults withdraw emotionally. Disorganized adults oscillate between extremes. Therapy can help, but early wiring runs deep. Now let's get social. Humans are obsessed with explaining behavior. Attribution theory examines how we assign causes. Internal attributions blame personality. External attributions blame situations. Fundamental attribution error is our bias toward internal attributions for others and external for ourselves. Someone cuts you off, they're a jerk. You cut someone off, traffic was confusing. This asymmetry fuels conflict and misunderstanding constantly. Stereotypes are cognitive shortcuts about groups. Sometimes based on kernels of truth, often wildly inaccurate, always dehumanizing when rigidly applied. Prejudice is negative feelings toward groups. Discrimination is negative actions. Implicit bias operates unconsciously. You can consciously reject racism while still showing bias on reaction time tests. The implicit association test measures this. It's controversial but revealing. Most people harbor biases they don't endorse. Persuasion works through two routes. Central route uses logic and evidence. Peripheral route uses emotional appeals, attractiveness, and authority. Advertisements use peripheral constantly. Celebrity endorsement doesn't make the product better, but it works. Elaboration likelihood model says your route depends on motivation and ability. Care deeply and have time? Central. Distracted or apathetic? Peripheral. Social proof is powerful. If everyone's buying it, must be good. Scarcity creates urgency. Limited time offer. Door in the face technique asks huge favor first, then reasonable favor feels small. Foot in the door starts small, builds to large. Reciprocity makes you feel obligated after receiving a gift. These tactics are everywhere. Conformity is changing behavior to match groups. Solomon Asch showed people will state obviously wrong answers if a group does. About 75% conformed at least once. Not because they believed it, because social pressure is agonizing. Obedience is following orders from authority. Stanley Milgram's experiments had ordinary people administering what they believed were lethal electric shocks because a researcher in a lab coat said continue. 65% went to maximum voltage, not because they were sadists, because authority overrides personal morality shockingly easily. Groupthink happens when cohesive groups prioritize consensus over accuracy. Dissent gets suppressed. Bad decisions get made. Bay of Pigs invasion, Challenger disaster, countless corporate failures. De-individuation, losing self-awareness in crowds, leads to behavior you'd never do alone. Riots, mobs, internet comment sections. Diffusion of responsibility means no single person feels accountable. Bystander effect, the more people present during an emergency, the less likely anyone helps. Everyone assumes someone else will. Kitty Genevieve's case, woman murdered while 38 witnesses did nothing, exemplifies this. Attraction follows patterns. Proximity, you like who's nearby. Similarity, you like who's like you. Reciprocity, you like who likes you back. Physical attractiveness matters way more than anyone admits. Robert Sternberg's triangular theory says love has three components: intimacy, emotional closeness, passion, physical attraction, commitment, decision to maintain the relationship. Different combinations create different love types. Intimacy plus passion is romantic love. Passion plus commitment is fatuous love. All three is consummate love, the ideal. Just commitment is empty love. Relationships shift between these over time. Aggression has biological and social roots. Frustration-aggression hypothesis says blocked goals create aggression. Social learning theory says we copy aggressive models. Hostile attribution bias makes you perceive neutral actions as threatening, escalating conflict. Altruism, helping without benefit, seems evolutionarily bizarre but exists. Kin selection helps relatives who share genes. Reciprocal altruism helps those who might help you later. Even pure altruism might signal mate quality or build reputation. Personality tries to capture stable individual differences. Trait theory identifies dimensions people vary on. The big five are the gold standard: openness to experience, imaginative versus conventional, conscientiousness, organized versus careless, extroversion, outgoing versus reserved, agreeableness, compassionate versus antagonistic, neuroticism, anxious versus stable. These traits are roughly 40 to 60% heritable and predict life outcomes. High conscientiousness predicts career success. High neuroticism predicts mental health struggles. High agreeableness predicts relationship satisfaction. Psychodynamic theory, Sigmund Freud's legacy, emphasizes unconscious drives and childhood experiences. Odd wants pleasure now. Superego wants perfection and morality. Ego mediates between them and reality. Defense mechanisms like repression, denial, and projection protect the ego from anxiety. Freud was often wrong, sometimes offensively so, but the core idea that unconscious processes shape behavior is correct. We're not fully aware of why we do what we do. Humanistic psychology, Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow, emphasizes growth and self-actualization. Hierarchy of needs says physiological needs come first, then safety, then belonging, then esteem, then self-actualization. You can't pursue meaning if you're starving. Rogers emphasized unconditional positive regard, accepting people fully without conditions. Turns out that's therapeutic and rare. Social cognitive theory, Albert Bandura again, says personality emerges from interaction between thoughts, behavior, and environment. Reciprocal determinism means each influences the others constantly. Self-efficacy, belief in your ability to succeed, predicts actual success. People with high self-efficacy set harder goals, persist longer, recover faster from failure. Low self-efficacy creates self-fulfilling failure. Personality assessment uses inventories like the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, MMPI, or the NEO Personality Inventory. These need validity, measuring what they claim, and reliability, consistent results over time. Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, MBTI, is popular but scientifically weak, fun for self-reflection, terrible for hiring or diagnosis. Clinical psychology deals with psychological disorders. The DSM-5, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, classifies mental disorders based on symptoms and duration. It's a tool, not a Bible. Diagnosis helps communication and treatment planning, but shouldn't define a person. Major depressive disorder involves persistent low mood, loss of interest, changes in sleep and appetite, and sometimes suicidal thoughts. Generalized anxiety disorder involves excessive worry most days for 6 months, plus physical symptoms like restlessness and fatigue. Panic disorder features sudden intense fear, rapid heartbeat, shortness of breath, feeling of impending doom. Schizophrenia involves psychosis, hallucinations, delusions, disorganized thinking, and negative symptoms like flat affect and social withdrawal. It's neurobiological, often treated with antipsychotics. Bipolar disorder alternates between manic episodes, elevated mood and risky behavior, and depressive episodes. Personality disorders like borderline, narcissistic, and antisocial involve pervasive maladaptive patterns of thinking and relating. Assessment uses clinical interviews, psychological testing like the MMPI or projective tests like the Rorschach ink blots, and behavioral observations. Diagnosis is complex, requires training, and must rule out medical causes. Treatment approaches vary. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, targets maladaptive thoughts and behaviors through structured techniques. Exposure therapy treats phobias by gradual, safe confrontation. Psychodynamic therapy explores unconscious conflicts and past experiences. Humanistic therapy provides empathic, non-directive support. Medication, antidepressants, anxiolytics, antipsychotics, mood stabilizers addresses neurochemical imbalances. Emerging treatments include mindfulness-based therapies, EMDR for trauma, ketamine for treatment-resistant depression, and psychedelic-assisted therapy showing promise in trials. Stigma around mental illness remains a barrier. People avoid treatment fearing judgment. Education and open conversation help. Recovery is possible. Most mental disorders are treatable, not always curable, but manageable. Let's rapid-fire applications. Health psychology studies how behavior affects physical health. Stress activates the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, releasing cortisol, which boosts short-term performance but damages long-term health. Chronic stress causes inflammation, heart disease, weakened immunity. Coping strategies matter. Problem-focused coping tackles the stressor. Emotion-focused coping manages feelings. Both useful depending on context. Health behavior change is hard. Knowing smoking kills doesn't make you quit. Interventions use stages of change model, motivational interviewing, and habit formation techniques. Industrial organizational psychology applies psychology to workplaces. Motivation theories include Maslow's hierarchy, Hertzberg's two-factor theory that says hygiene factors prevent dissatisfaction and motivators create satisfaction, and self-determination theory that emphasizes autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Leadership styles, transformational versus transactional, affect team performance. Job satisfaction predicts retention, productivity, and well-being. Organizational culture shapes behavior powerfully. Evolutionary psychology asks what behaviors were adaptive ancestrally. Mate preferences, parental investment, coalition formation, cheater detection all show cross-cultural patterns suggesting evolutionary roots. Critics argue it's speculative and risks justifying bad behavior. Fair criticisms, but the framework generates testable predictions. Cultural psychology examines how culture shapes psychology. Individualist cultures emphasize personal goals. Collectivist cultures emphasize group harmony. Cognition, emotion, motivation all vary culturally. Neither is superior, just different. Positive psychology studies well-being, not just disorder. Happiness comes from pleasure, engagement, meaning, relationships, and accomplishment. PERMA model. Gratitude practices, strengths-based interventions, and mindfulness increase well-being. Hedonic adaptation means you get used to positive changes, so sustainable happiness requires continual growth and connection, not just achievement. Neuroscience keeps advancing. fMRI shows brain regions activating during tasks. EEG measures electrical activity. Optogenetics controls specific neurons with light. Brain-computer interfaces let paralyzed people control devices with thoughts. Artificial intelligence uses neural network models inspired by brains. Understanding biological intelligence might unlock artificial general intelligence, or we accidentally create something we can't control. Fun times. So, what have we learned? Your brain is hardware running software shaped by genes and experience. You learn constantly through conditioning, observation, and memory. You think using flawed shortcuts. You develop through predictable stages with critical periods. You're deeply social, influenced by groups, authorities, and biases you don't notice. Your personality is stable traits plus unconscious motives plus learned patterns. Mental disorders are common, treatable, and nothing to be ashamed of. And psychology is the toolkit for understanding this beautiful, broken, utterly irrational species. That's psychology, all of it. Well, most of it. Explained fast. If this somehow made sense and you want more, thumbs up. If it gets enough love, I'll make another deep dive because apparently explaining entire fields in one sitting is now my brand. Thanks for sticking around. Now go forth and analyze everyone around you, responsibly.